Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Lucard, and I am an HMIS administrator for Montgomery County. In today's training, we're going to talk about what you can do to start cleaning up your data before point in time. Remember that point in time is going to be next week on January 26th. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you what you can do to get your clients ready ahead of time so that your data is good for when we run those reports after the night of point in time when we start doing all the cleanup. For most of your clients, unless you're an outreach program, you can get those clients started with the cleanup now rather than later, so you can feel a little more relaxed. You don't have to feel pressured with this deadline hanging over your heads that you have to get all this cleanup in with a short date. You can start now. You can probably be done even before point in time. This is especially true for permanent housing programs, for rapid rehousing programs, for our HIP programs, because the population you are serving right now today is almost certainly going to be the same people that you're serving on the night of point in time. Low barrier shelters, because of COVID, there isn't as much in and out as there was before COVID. So you can still get a lot of those clients cleaned up, but there still probably will be some new ones that check in or check out from your program on the 26th point in time. For outreach programs, you're going to have it the hardest, those non-shelter clients, because you are going to be going out in point in time, you're going to be doing the survey, but that doesn't mean you still can't clean up clients that you're pretty sure you're going to encounter on that night. You know where the encampments are, you have a pretty good idea of who's going to be there, so we can start getting that data cleaned up now rather than at the last minute. So let's talk about those two reports that we can do to get a lot of good data cleanup in. So we have really great data quality before point in time. The first is going to be that COC APR. Remember, that is the center of your universe here in Montgomery County. All of the work you do revolves around the APR. We want to make sure that if you have an HMIS account, that you are running it at least once a month, regardless of your access level. We definitely want agency admins to be running it more, but case managers can run it once a month just to check on their data quality as well. And by doing that, you'll see where your errors are and you'll nip them in the bud before they get to things like your Sage upload or LSA or point in time. So you're going to go over here to the left-hand side. We've already done it, but let's show you again. We're going to go to reports and we're going to click here at COC APR. Now you can see I've been running a lot of COC APRs because, hey, we're trying to help programs get ready for cleanup. We're going to show you how to put information in here so that you can build a report. All right, we do have a full hour-long video on the APR. If you want to really go into depth, you can do that with the previous APR video. We also have a PowerPoint, but this is just going to give you a quick refresher if this is your first time seeing the APR at your first point in time. We're going to pick our provider, right? So in this case, let's grab, the men's low barrier shelter. And what we're going to do first is we're going to run it for the month so far. Remember, we've been saying for almost a year now that you need to run this every month and make those corrections every month. So we're just doing this for January 1st through today, the day I'm recording it, January 19th, 2022. We're going to pick our provider type. And remember, you're going to run this for each of your programs. Don't run it as a reporting group. You want to run it for each of your programs separately, so you can hone in on the error specific to that program. There could be some overlap if you do a reporting group, and we just want to make sure that we get it by provider by provider. So you're going to run for the month of January so far. We're going to hit build report, and we can see that it's running, right? Running. If you want to push it through before the pop-up comes, you can hit the magnifying glass. Works about 50% of the time, and as you can see, we didn't have to wait for the pop-up. Here's our information. So here's our men's emergency shelter for the month of January so far. And let's talk about the lines that you, as an agency or a program, want to look at to make sure you have data quality. So first up, total number of persons served. Here's how many people have been served for the month of January so far. This is an all-adult men shelter, right? So we can see that we've served 39 clients. Number of adults, 39. That's good because it's an all-adult client. We shouldn't have any children in here, right? Then we want to go look at number of veterans, line 10. We have 2. Does that sound right? Great. Number of youth under 24. We always want to look at lines 12 and 13. Why? Because it's for clients that are between 18 and 24. That's what counts as a youth. Since we do have youth programs, we just want to make sure that they aren't accidentally in the wrong program, especially if you have an adults program and a youth program in your agency. So we click on this one. The name and HMIS ID will come up when you do a pop-up, as you can see there. So what we do is we just see if that client is in the right program and we do have his age correctly. One other thing we want to look at, number of adults, head of household, right? 38. So we have 39 clients. So this means one of two things. Either one, we've put someone in incorrectly in terms of their head of household status, or two, we've grouped two adults together as a household, which is fine. Because remember, an individual program is households without minor children, and a FAM program is adults with minor children. So this is very possible that we have two people that are grouped together here as a household. Still, what we do is we take a look. We'd see who's the 38 people here. We'd look through this. We'd look at the 39 here, see who's missing, and then just double check to make sure that they are in a household with someone else. Line 16, clients that have been in your program for over 365 days or more. That's to help you make sure you get those annual assessments in for those clients. You need to get those in because remember, with the APR, if you don't have an annual assessment in, you're going to get dinged a ton of times. You got to get those annual assessments in. That is a separate training. It's not very long, but watch that video or the PowerPoint as well. But these are the areas we really want to make sure we're looking at in section 5A. Now for section 6, which is 6A data quality, personally identifiable information, the universal data elements are 6B. 6C is income and housing data quality. 6D is chronic homeless. These are the sections you really want to pay attention to for the purposes of point in time. We don't have to really worry about timeliness because we're really focusing on getting the data quality. Timeliness is very important, but for the purposes of point in time, we're just focusing on the errors in section 6. So let's talk about what these are. Client doesn't know, client refused. Most often it's going to happen with social security numbers if they're an undocumented client. Remember, for low barrier clients and for street outreach, you can do client doesn't know or client refused. For rapid rehousing, permanent housing, HIP programs, you may not choose client doesn't know or client refused for any category. If you see client doesn't know, client refused, you may not choose that. The only exception is social security number for undocumented clients. You must have information filled in for every possible category in this and the 0252, which we're going to look at in a second. All right, information missing. This means that it is blank, that we have something blank in there. So for this particular client, race is not filled out at all. We need to get that in. We click on the button, bam, that tells us who it is. That gives us their HMIS ID, and we can go fix that. Data issues is going to be a logic error. So for example, let's say you didn't put in the date of birth, but under the date of birth quality question, you said full, right? Or social security number, you only put the last 4 digits in. That's going to give you a data issue. Or if you put in a social security number that begins with 9, that is not actually a social security number. That is a taxpayer identification number. That will give you a data issue. So be careful there. Next section is 6B, and we really want to pay attention to these. Veteran status, very important for the purpose of the point in time. We need to get this down to 0. Project start date, there never should be an error in here because you really can't be in the program without that. Relationship to head of household. This is the keystone for all reports in ART and report writer that we make. Relationship to head of household. If you do not have this in, the client will not pull correctly in reports. So if you see any errors in this, this needs to be the first thing you correct. Get this down to 0. And remember how we said up here, hey, it looks like we might have either a household between 2 or more people, or they're missing their head of household. There's our answer right here. They're missing the head of the household for that client. We have to get that in. Client location, every client must have this filled in. That's at MD 601. It's the only option in that question, trying to make it as easy as possible for you. Make sure this is 0. Disabling condition, again, we want this as low as possible. Destination errors, that's your exit destination, 0%, that's good to see. Income at start, that means that you have an income error in your client entry. We want to get that filled in. Income and source at annual assessment. We can see we got a lot of these here. So what do we do to clean this up? Well, it's one of two things. If you have an income and sources at annual assessment error, it means either there is a literal error in your annual assessment or that you have forgotten to do your annual assessment in the first place and you need to get that in. If we scroll up, we can see 10 clients have been in the program for 365 days or more. So it could very well be that these are just, hey, we forgot to do it. Let's go in, let's do the 5 seconds it takes to fix that. And let's go take a look. All right. If you scroll all the way down, and I know this might give some of you vertigo that I'm going this fast. If you scroll all the way down to section, say, 16 here, we can see number of clients without their annual assessment. So we can see 5 clients do not have their annual assessment. And we had 6 annual assessment errors, right? So that means 5 of these are errors where they just don't have their annual assessment, and 1 is an actual error in the income itself. Gives you a little bit more help of figuring out what you need to do with these clients. And finally, street outreach here under 6D. We want to make sure we get these chronic homeless questions answered. The approximate date homelessness started, number of times, number of months, right? We want to make sure that we get all of this filled in. So we just need to go to the client, click on this, gives you our information, and we're going to fill in the parts that are missing. You know, number of months that the client was homeless and the approximate date their stretch of homelessness started. Other sections that will help you with point in time, right? It's going to be the number of persons served. And in fact, why don't I move to a permanent housing or rapid rehousing? Here's one. This is called Jefferson House. And let's do that because this is going to be something that you need to do for your permanent housing or rapid housing clients. As you can see here, the number of persons served is 5, and the number of persons who are moved into housing is 4, right? So this means out of the 5 clients this program is serving, 4 are officially considered moved in. This means that they have a housing move-in date interim, all right? If you are missing a client in here, you think that they are supposed to be housed, like maybe you're like, oh no, I have 5 clients housed. Why are we only showing up 4? That means that you haven't done the housing move-in date interim. You have to get that in. So please make sure that you get the housing move-in date interim for your client. Again, that is another video. You should know how to do that by now. If you don't, please watch the housing move-in date interim video so that we can help you to understand how to do the housing move-in date. So you look at this and you go, oh, I've got 5 clients. 4 of them have moved into housing. Brockman, Janning, Thompson, Euro. So Miles is the one that's missing their housing move-in date. So if they have moved in, we'd want to go in, we'd want to go back to their account, and we'd want to fix them by putting that housing move-in date in. Section 7 and Section A are going to be very important. Section 7 for individual and family programs, and Section 8A for any of you that have households in your program. Again, households with minor children, households without minor children. As long as you have more than one person grouped together, look at this so you can see how many households you have in your program versus how many are actually being housed. This is going to be very, very important for your programs, especially rapid rehousing and permanent housing and HIP programs, because you need to make sure you get those housing move-in dates in. Other sections, gender, if you want to take a look at that. Age, make sure you don't have anyone under 18 in your program if you're an all-adult program. Race, just to make sure that it looks right. Ethnicity, same thing. But for the most part, you're going to stick to sections 5, 6, 7, and 8 to do your initial cleanup. Okay. So once we do our cleanup here, we should be good to go for point in time. Right, let's go back. So if we do our cleanup here, January 1st to January 19th, we know that we've got everything ready to go for point in time, unless someone just happens to come in that day or leaves that day. You know, or they might have a change. Like maybe it just happens that their annual assessment falls on 1/26. Then you do an annual assessment interim. Maybe they come to you on point in time and go, hey, I've got a job. So you do an interim for point in time that just because it just happens to be on that day, and you would do an income change. You don't have to do an interim for the night of point in time for every single one of your clients. You are only going to do it if there is actually a change to the client, like an income change, they get a disability, it's their annual assessment, or you would exit or enter them out of the program, depending on if they're leaving or coming, because it just happens to be that night when it does, when they join or leave your program. So after you do the cleanup for this, then what you want to do is on the night of point in time and the night after point in time, you're going to run the APR for one day, 126 to 126, right? You're going to run this report and you're just going to double check to see if there's any cleanup that you need to do. And then, of course, clearly this hasn't been cleaned up because we just use this as an example. But if you still have errors on 126, you are going to want to start cleaning this up on 126, 127, 128. 129 and 130 is the weekend. Some of you might work on the weekends, but you want to try and get it cleaned up. And then what will happen is on the morning, bright and early on 131, Beza and myself will be running these reports for each of your agency, and we'll be like, hey, look at this cleanup you have to do, right? We're going to say, we need you to get this cleanup in. We're going to take a look at the person served, person number of households, and say, does this look correct to you? We're going to look for any errors like their relation to have a household. We're going to send you a report and say, you have a week or two to clean this up. Please get these in. We do not want to have to come back a second or a third time and ask you to get this down to 0% errors. So please make sure you do it ahead of time, because I want you to be able to relax, not feel pressured by an over looming deadline that says you must get this in, you must get this in. We're going to take a look at the people that are housed versus people that you serve in the program and say, hey, I see you've got 25 clients, only 20 are housed. Here's a list of both. Do you need to make corrections? We're going to be doing that. So we're going to be using this report on 131 to see what you have outstanding. Make sure you don't have anything outstanding. Make sure you're cleaned up before that. So you have not only today, but you have all the way through like 11:59 on 130 to try and get this cleaned up so that your data looks perfect for when we pull the point in time report like this and say, hey, you somehow still have something you need to fix. And we don't want to have to do that. We want to be able to go, wow, great, you got everything cleaned up. That's awesome. And then, you won't have anything to do. You'll be able to relax and be like, wow, this is the easiest point in time ever. And if you and your agency have been doing those monthly cleanups, it will be the easiest point in time ever. That's what we want. We want to make your life easier. We don't want you to feel stressed, and we don't want you to feel pressure to feel behind that 8 ball. We want you to be able to go, we're good here. We can move on to the other projects that we need to do. Now, let's talk about the other report you want to run. And you should be familiar with this if you're an agency admin. Please note, only an agency admin can run this report, and they should know how to do this because we have been talking about doing this every single time we have met with you. You're going to go to Art. You can either go down here to the left-hand corner and click Art, or you're going to go to the top and click Connect to Art, right? We're going to go to Public Folders. We're going to go to Art Gallery Reports, Art Gallery Reports. Now we're going to choose 0252, the data completion report. And let it spin. And let's spin some more. And now we're going to fill in the prompts. We don't change the EDA. We're going to just pick providers. And I'm just going to grab a ton of providers here for the sake of grabbing them, right? Because I'm not going to pick any particular one. This is just to grab a whole bunch of programs. Start date is going to be, again, we want to do this twice. We want to run it for the full month so far. So 1/1/2022. Remember, end date for these reports in Art is plus 1 day. So today's the 19th. I'm going to run it till the 20th. 1 to end date plus 1 day, 1/20. Services and report card, no. We run the report, and here we go. All right, so let's talk about the 0252 report now that it's run. First up is going to be these graphs. First graph is overall grade. As we can see here with the 9 programs we chose, 4 have an A, 1 has a B, 4 have a C. You must have an A in this report or we're going to make you do a lot of cleanup. So you must have an overall grade of an A. In fact, you must have an A in all of these sections. For the UDEs, 7 programs have an A, 2 have a B. For the additional only, 6 have an A, 3 have an F. That's not good. And over here, Hud Verification, this is always the worst area for programs. 3 have an A, 1 have a C, 5 have an F. So these programs I've randomly chosen. You guys have a lot of cleaning up to do before a point in time, and we are going to make you do the cleanup. So we just want to make sure that when you run this report for the month, you have an A. The overall report card, tab B, is going to be all the programs you chose together, and it's going to show you your overall score. So you can see HUD UDED is pretty good. The other areas, we've got some work to do. Now, the universal data elements, these are those questions like name, social security number, date of birth. You're going to go to each of these questions and you're going to clean them up. Look at that client location. You have to fill these in. So there's 8 clients we absolutely need to get this in for. Relationship to head of household, we're missing 11. That's not good. You need to get those in. So the additional data elements, these are the yes, no questions and domestic violence. So again, we can see that the quality drops here, especially for domestic violence. We absolutely need to get this in for point in time. So you should be using this report, seeing what's missing from your program, and then going in to fill in and fix the information. HUD verification, these are the income questions, disability, non-cash benefits, health insurance. These are those questions we have all these videos about with the assessments, the HUD assessments, the matrix that you have to fill out. As you can see, some of these are done pretty good, like the income amount is 99%, but the actual income matrix drops to 68.98% with these programs. That's bad. So you have a lot of cleanup to do if you're in some of these programs. Please remember that this is mandatory and you are going to be ranked based on how good your cleanup is. This is not optional. And this is something we are going to be keeping track of. And it can maybe affect things when you're applying for refunding. Because of course, if you're doing SAGE or you're applying for refunding, data quality is one of the things that they look at. And I have seen programs get rejected for funding because of how bad their data quality is. Everything here needs to be an A. So please, 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 if you see anything less than A, you should be running this report once a month. Get that data cleanup in. Tab C is going to look at each specific program that you ran in your report. So if you have like 4 different rapid rehousing programs and you chose them all in this report, it's going to break them down here. So here we can see the American in COVID response shelter. Here's their areas. So you can look at the specific programs to see how they're doing. Tab D is going to be a lot of help for you because it's going to show you the exact program and it's going to show you where the errors are and exactly what the error is. So if a client's grayed out, you're good to go. If a client is not grayed out, you've got work to do. So for this client, 20824, everything looks good until we get to domestic violence. It's a null, which means it was never filled in. Go into client 20824 and fix their domestic violence. For client 25160, they're missing the yes, no for non-cash benefits. They're missing the yes, no for insurance. Non-cash benefits was not answered at all, and they only answered one of the 10 insurance questions. So you might need a little help understanding what these abbreviations are. Again, look at our video on the 0252. Email your agency admin, and if you still need help, email myself and Beza. You have to get all this cleaned up by point in time. So in this particular case, the shelter has some work to do. But this is what we do for the 0252. And again, after you've done your monthly cleanup, you're going to make sure that you run this report on the night or on the day of point in time, and then the night after, and you're going to use the following dates. So 126 to 127, 126 to 127. Enter start date 126, end date will be 127 because end date plus 1 day on this report. And you'd run the query and you just do it again and you get that last little bit of cleanup in. As you can see, there's no data because it hasn't happened yet. ART isn't going to let you do this sort of cleanup until 126, but This is just for the purposes of showing it to you. Make sure you have those prompts, but make sure you're doing that cleanup for the month beforehand. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to go look at a test client. So let me grab just that. Okay. Here's a guy in an interfaith workday program. It's not a real client. We're just going to look at a test. Now, remember, you want to clean up their information. So you're going to be doing two things. You're going to be looking at their most recent interim. You're going to be looking at their entry assessment on their project start date. So again, you're going to go here. You're going to go to the project start date. You're going to click on the pencil, and you're just going to go in, and you're going to make sure everything looks good from the date they came into the program. So does this look good for their entry date? Is this how the client appeared on 12/1/2021? Just make sure that nothing is missing or looks wonky. Like, look, non-cash benefits. We didn't finish filling out the matrix here. Do they have food stamps? Right? You say yes. Oh, look, they probably do have food stamps. We just forgot to fill it in because we said yes up there. And of course, you'll have actual proof that they did it because you're not just going to randomly guess. Let's see, we fixed that. And so you'd go in and you'd be fixing stuff based on when the client came into the program. Then, and these are the things that are on the entry assessment, like relationship to head of household. These are the things that don't change. So relationship to head of household, date of birth, ethnicity, gender, technically could change, but generally doesn't while they're in your program. Does the client have a disabling condition? Client location. All these pieces of information we want to make sure is true as of the date that they came into the program. But if they had a change in, say, January of 2022, you wouldn't make the change here because this is their photo of the client as they were on December. If they have a change past the date of 12/1/2021 that you haven't put in the system yet, you need to do an interim. So if they come to you on 12/2 and go, hey, look, my food stamps is going to go up. I got the letter, here's the date and everything. You wouldn't make the change here because that was true of 12/2 and the entry date is 12/1. You do an interim for the date of the change. So if his food stamps went up on 12/2, even though it's a day after they came into the program, you do an interim here and you'd make the change. Then you're going to go into their most recent interim. And remember, a lot of clients have their SSI, they have SSDI, they have food stamps. Those change every January. So you should have a January interim for those clients where you've updated their SSI, SSDI, or food stamps for the new 2022 year. Then again, you're just going to go into the update and you're going to make sure that everything looks correct. The housing moving date, prior living situation. Is all of this filled out and correct? Do we have their most recent SPDAT? Is their income correct? Are they still making $600? Is their disabling condition correct? We're going through and making sure that all of these questions are correct. The HUD verification ones are really important. Client location, we want to make sure that everything is filled in and correct. And then at the bottom of our update, we have the COG/point in time question. These are questions that only really need to be answered once a year on point in time, but we have them on the update now so you can answer them year round. It doesn't make sense to be doing an interim for every single client, especially if you serve 100 clients, just on the night of point in time to answer these three questions. Now they're on the normal updates, so you can answer them year round. And again, you don't have to worry. Just double check and make sure that these are answered. If they've been answered in previous years, the information will automatically pre-populate into here. But if they're blank, if they're a new client, try and get the COG questions in. This is Montgomery County specific. And we just want to try and get these three questions answered. If anything's missing, it's probably going to be these three. If you've been keeping good data quality, everything else should be filled because you're doing those interims all year long. You're covering your changes all year long. One other thing I want to show you is, let's say that the client's gender has changed since they came into the program. Let's say they were, that they've become transgender since they joined into your program. You don't want to change the gender here on the entry screen because they came in as male, right? So where do you make the change? You go into the interim. Let's look at their, let's say that it happened on 1/14, just so we don't have to make it. That's why we did the interim. So we do those interim, but notice gender, social security number, things like that aren't on the interim update. So what do? It's not on the entry because we don't want to change it to the entry because they were male on 12/1. They identified as male on 12/1, but now it's 1/14, and they're identifying as transgender female, right? They feel comfortable to come out and say, oh, this is who I am. But where do we make the change? So what you're going to do is you're going to go to the entry bubble. See all these different bubbles here? We're going to go to the bubble. And we're going to go here to the entry bubble. And now this is the exact same screen that you would normally see on the client entry, but you can see it's with an interim review date of 1/14. And here, we can change the gender to female and transgender. We hit save. And remember, we're still in the interim review. So we can go back and get out of here. And we can see that on 12/1, they identified as male. But on 1/14, they now identify as female and transgender. So if you don't see it on the update, remember that you can do it on the little bubble here, your entry bubble, your assessment bubble. You can make little changes here. Same with if you want to do the acuity score. See how we don't see the acuity score here? All we do is we go to the acuity score bubble, click on that, and do a new acuity score for the date you want to do it. Maybe they do their acuity score on point in time. You know, you do an interim for point in time and you do an acuity scale. But that's all you need to do. You got to run that 0252. You got to run the APR, and then you're going to go into the clients where you see errors, and you're going to fix those errors before the night of point in time. Then, knock on wood, you won't have anything to do the night of point in time or the morning after. You won't have to rush to get that cleanup in between 1:26, 1:27, and 1:30. You'll have everything done now. You won't have to worry about anything. We'll send you a great email. All you'll have to do is check the roster that we send you. Make sure all the clients that are listed as housed actually are housed, that there's no one missing or added on there that shouldn't be, and make sure that no one's just somehow missing off your roster list when we run the reports and send it to you. If everything is good and you have a 0% error rate, you are good to go. If not, you've got a lot of cleanup to do. And we saw some programs have cleanup, some don't. So please make sure you get started now. Get those cleanups in, because what we want more than anything is for you to have a stress-free as possible point in time. We want to be able to say that you're ranked at tier 0 or tier 1 to show that you guys are doing great with data quality. You don't want to have to rank anyone as a tier 2 or tier 3 program, because that means, you know, we're going to have a talk and some action plan. So please make sure you start now. We've been having these meetings all month. This video is just to help you out if you've somehow missed some of our presentations that we've been doing all year long or all month long. Please start your cleanup now. I can't emphasize that enough. Thank you guys. Have a great day, and may your point in time be as easy as possible.